Welcome to The Catalyst, an exciting and insightful podcast produced by Northeast Iowa Community College. I'm your host, Amy Lasack. Together, we'll explore the people, programs, and partnerships that make Northeast Iowa Community College unique. From student success stories to behind-the-scenes info about athletics, innovation, and industry collaboration, each episode dives deeper into your community's college. Get ready for an inside look at the impact of community-driven education at NICC. We want to welcome our guest, Erin Shaw, to our episode. Dr. Erin Shaw is a resilient leader who thrives on solving problems, learning continuously, encouraging others, and connecting people and ideas. She holds a PhD in educational leadership and policy analysis from the University of Missouri and has held several senior academic leadership roles at multiple community colleges. Erin is currently the Strategic Planning Project Manager at Northeast Iowa Community College. Welcome, Erin, to The Catalyst.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So today our episode is about soft skills. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what they are, how important they are in today's workplace, and really, let's just start with the term soft skills. Some people prefer calling them real skills. Why is that? And does the shift in languaging make any difference at all?
Sure. I am one of those people that prefers to call soft skills real skills. It comes from the author Seth Godin. He's one of the people that has kind of promoted that idea. And it's because soft skills aren't easy at all. They're hard to do, and they require practice and attention. And they're also essential. So that just makes them, they make a real difference in the workforce and in your everyday life, even at home with your family and your spouse. So that's why I think I prefer real skills. And then another reason is just sometimes by calling them soft, they end up diminished or tied to only roles that might be considered soft. And again, any role can benefit from these kinds of skills.
So for those that aren't familiar with the terminology of soft skills or real skills, what does that contain? What sort of topics or areas of concentration would that revolve around?
Sure. Some of them are hard to measure, but nonetheless essential. So similar, some of them could be like communication, teamwork, being able to troubleshoot or problem solve, adaptability. Right now, of course, things are changing at an alarming rate. So being open to change, being willing to even consider things changing, those are key soft skills or real skills. Critical thinking, being able to manage your time. That's another one that employers really value.
So a wide variety of things that you don't necessarily think of taking a particular class when you're in school. But when you do think about the technical skills and the soft skills and how they work together on the job, why are soft skills sometimes really what it takes to get people further in their career?
I think kind of going back to it's how you can really make a difference. So employers might be hiring you for your technical skills, for what you're able to do on the job, but they also are hoping that you're going to play nice with others, right? That you're going to work as a team. You're going to be willing to listen to their instructions and feedback that they give you. There's going to be all these other expectations that may or may not be part of the job description. And so really thinking about those are areas that you can improve yourself. They might be willing to teach you how to weld a certain way that they want you to do it a specific way, right? Or how they want you to talk to a customer. But being able to go one more and just add a little bit more to your organization, to your team, being on time to work is going to keep your job and managing your time so you can finish projects on deadline. Those are all examples of ways that soft skills would be a key part of your job, but also something that that you can develop yourself and continue to get better at and learn.
It's such a big part of teamwork, the ability to get along, the ability to communicate. Can you talk a little bit about how essential that really is to develop a strong team and the trust that's needed there?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about your team, at least I'll just for myself, I really try to think of the strengths that each team member brings when you're assembling a team and kind of deciding what each person would work on. And so, being able to understand that about your team, but then also work with them to develop and strengthen the different skills that they might need help with. So that's
Mhm.
where, with soft skills being something that you can learn, it's not a talent that you were just it's not occurring naturally for you, then you can get better at things and you could bring more to a team or have people do some training to get better at certain skills to complement what you're trying to get done as a group. Um, and it really, one of the things about soft skills too is I feel like you can feel the difference when
Mm,
you are working with someone or interacting with someone who has strong soft skills and or real skills. And it just takes those human interactions to the next level. And so if you think about thoughtful or caring customer service, the times that you've
mhm.
received that, you can think in your head what that felt like and how good you felt and what that interaction was like. I guarantee that person had really strong soft skills to deliver that kind of experience for you. Um, supervisors that can make you feel valued as an employee. Another key part of being on a team, right, is just feeling valued for your
Right.
contributions and then being able to motivate others on your team by offering help and support. Those are other forms of soft skills, I think.
Yeah. Boy, that's really powerful when you think about it that way, is how that might make somebody feel, and that you can really feel the value of soft skills as you're interacting with folks. And I imagine that really is kind of at the basis of building that trust.
Hmm. And I love that there's that quote that one of the things that made me like go down a rabbit hole with all of this, with soft skills and trying to improve my own ability to lead others with empathy and courage and vulnerability, for example, was a quote from Maya Angelou that it's the one about at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Hmm.
And that one just really stays with me about how to continually think about, when you're in an interaction with another person, with your employee who comes in to, ask a question or run something by you, taking the time to like fully shift your focus to that person and give them your undivided attention instead of just
Yes.
working away at your email and look over and like, what do you need? You know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So being able to like fully, there's another author who talks about it as swiveling your chair, like a very tangible physical thing you do. But to that person on the receiving end, again, they can just feel that like now they have your attention and your focus and listening, which are also
Yes.
soft skills.
It's such a big deal. Just a personal story. I just got done traveling to Japan, and the security at the airport in Japan, and the stark difference from that to what you find in the United States. That the feeling that we got when we were in Japan was very customized, and let us hold your hand to help you get through this. We'll walk you to your gate. And then our first interaction at TSA in Dallas was keep moving, go on, So that feeling part of it does really make a big impact on how somebody's perceiving things and how they might react back to you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, why, for a leader, for a manager, you talked a little bit about the fact that soft skills or these real skills are things that you can build upon. You can go through training, you can work on them to get better. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe your journey through identifying some of the things that you've seen?
Of course. Let's see. So if you think about, um, leaders have the opportunity to model these skills for their employees. And I also think they have the opportunity to communicate what their needs are. As a business, if you have certain expectations about customer service, for example, being able to communicate that to your employees of what done looks like, or what good customer service, for example, would look like,
Hmm.
is really important. And then so leaders have that opportunity to really model what they're looking for, acting with empathy, for example, or being willing to admit mistakes, or be vulnerable in a situation with their employees. And then also just that no one's perfect, right? That
Mm-hmm.
these are all things that we're always working on and trying to develop.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some thoughts I have there.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so hard because I think a lot of times we are instilled with trying to get to that level of perfection. So being able and vulnerable enough to accept that and to share that can be a really big thing and a key part of those real skills.
Yeah. Completely agree.
So I think for a lot of people that there's an assumption that these soft skills are just part of your personality and it's not something you're going to be able to change. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that anybody can change these soft skills, that it's not just part of your personality, that they definitely can be learned and improved upon. The hardest thing, though, is that it does take intention and practice.
Hmm.
And that is why they're so hard. And we can't call them hard skills. I get it. But it would be appropriate because you have to prioritize it as an individual, And so if somebody says that um, they can't be trained or they can't learn, um, I think that they might just need to practice some curiosity about why that might be,
Mm,
and reflect on um, what's keeping them from being open to learning about it from a different perspective, and considering how you might be able to um, approach something differently. Because some of this stuff is not, some of it's could be scary stuff to people. So public speaking, for example, tons of people are afraid of public speaking, but it's definitely something you can learn to do and get better at. For me, public speaking, I might still be quaking, when I'm up there. There's definitely times where I am like visibly shaking in my boots, but with practice, it continues to get easier, and even, for this podcast, and trying to prepare for things like this. Like, these are all things that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit, but that again is just another way that you're developing those soft skills, is being able to manage uncertainty is another type of soft skill.
hmm. And I'm sure in your travels with different educational institutions and different positions you've held, you've seen really good examples of somebody that's self-aware and exploring and showing great soft skills, and examples of times where you're like, ooh, maybe that isn't the best way to handle that. Can you share some insights and what does that look like when somebody is showing really good soft skills?
Sure. Um, Thanks for letting me talk about good examples.
They're always more fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes harder to think about though, right? No, I've had, so a couple times it's been with colleagues, for example. I had one, for example, who was an exceptional listener. And he and honestly, tied to NICC, Dr. Wee is also, he's been my mentor for years, and he has modeled really strong listening skills for me for so long. I just absorb as much as I can from him each time I get to meet with him. But when someone can listen to you and really make you feel seen and appreciated, and like, that they have nowhere to be, they have nothing else to do, they're just there with you in that
Mm,
moment, it is so powerful. And so that's one that I'm continuously working on is with listening and really making people feel seen and valued. Um, some of the others are even just feeling supported um, when you're trying to develop your different skills. So wanting to get better at public speaking or wanting to, some of the trying to think of, other examples, but some of those opportunities. So having a supervisor maybe recognize some opportunities for you to do a public speaking role that isn't high stakes, ease into it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those kind of opportunities. So that sponsorship so that you get some safe opportunities. And then one more that I would share is just as a leader, creating an environment where it's safe to fail or to make mistakes. And that is something that you can do. And I've had leaders who have done that well and who have not done that well. But that's another great one where if you feel like you can like run an idea up the flagpole and talk to them about something and be like, hey, I have this really great idea, and you're not going to get shot down. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really powerful, right? Like you just feel so empowered and excited and motivated to work on something. And so that's another one that, creating that safe space for people to try and experiment and innovate and be willing to fail and have that safety net, have that support if they do fail, that it's not a failure, honestly. It's just another way of looking at things.
I love that. I love the thought of being able to create that safe space so that people can expand their skill set and feel empowered to do so. You mentioned something earlier too that I thought was really great was the thought of active listening and that piece of the real skills. I think a lot of people, when they think of soft skills or the real skills, they think more of verbal skills, communication skills, conflict management, those types of things. I think listening sometimes gets a back seat to that. And you talked a little bit about that, something that you're actively working on. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about your experience on it? How are you actively working on that? What sort of things are you implementing?
So the main thing I'm trying to do is practice in meetings or in either one-on-one or in group settings. Practice not speaking first.
Hmm.
Practice really trying to listen. It is hard. Um, I definitely I'm a connector who likes to like jump in and like, ooh, ooh, yeah, yeah, I like have those
Yeah.
interactions. And so I would say it's still a work in progress, but that's okay. One day at a time. But that's one that in a group setting, trying to be sure like I hold my tongue, try to listen longer. Um, there was a great presenter. I went to a leadership institute a year ago, and one of the presidents who is presenting had a great line. He said, "You get to make the final decision as the president or the leader of an organization. So you can sit there and listen to everybody else's ideas. You don't have to be the first one to talk because
I love that.
let them share all of their ideas. You still get to decide at the end of the day if you want to do what you want to do. That's your choice. So you have no reason to talk first or talk over the other people. Let them all get their ideas out and be part of the decision making process. But I thought it was funny that it was a good point. Like at the end of the day, if you really are like set on what you want to do, you can make that decision. But how you go about making that decision and including others can be so much more powerful and inclusive,
Absolutely.
right?
And
So,
and you might change your mind. You might hear something along the way, but if you gave your idea first, sometimes as a leader too, if you give your idea first, everybody's like, okay, well, we're just going to go along with that.
yeah.
So taking that moment is so powerful.
And there's a couple techniques. So Brene Brown's Dare to Lead book is a key resource that I have used for leading with empathy and learning all these skills. But she talks about even on your Zoom conference calls, trying to minimize, she calls it the halo effect. So when a leader speaks first or someone who might whose views might be considered higher ranking than others in the group,
Mm-hmm.
if they speak first, then it does sometimes shut down communication, or people are like, yeah, I'll go with that. Sure, that sounds good. So what she'll do is that's why you use the Zoom chat, for example. If you have people simultaneously put in their thoughts, you don't get the halo effect. Or
Mm.
you can call on people and do certain orders of things, but that spontaneous, like hold up a sticky note in a meeting, or type into the Zoom chat if you're on Zoom or on virtual, then those are some ways that you can avoid that, like get everyone's spontaneous thoughts without critique and that halo effect.
Love that. Without critique.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think too, one of the things I've noticed is what I'm going to call the cell phone effect, right? And active listening and making sure you're in the moment. You talked about being in the moment. And so we have so many distractions
Mhm.
now. If you're on a Zoom meeting, your email pops up or your phone's dinging or something. Have you found that as you're working on active listening and being in the moment, any tips or tricks on how to relieve those distractions?
I will do one right now. I can still see my cell phone out of the corner of my eye. The number one thing I do is I put it out of sight. Like put it behind you, completely put it out of sight, because, and it's also on silent right now, of course, for the podcast recording, but in general, having your phone anywhere in your peripheral vision will make you subliminally think about it and whether you have a message that's waiting for you. I do turn off all any notifications like on my work computer, for example, so things aren't popping up constantly about new emails or about different reminders. My Zoom chat, for example, will change color, but it won't put big windows up all over my screen. And then same with my phone. I try to, I do a lot of deep work. So times when I really need to focus on a single task. And so being able to mute your phone, for example, during that time, and really focus, close other windows on your computer. You can do things like that to help with the distraction as well. But those are some ways. And then again, that swivel to your chair idea, it's from um, John Amici is the author, and he that includes putting down your phone
Mm,
and your Apple Watch. Like don't be
yes.
talking to someone and then be like, oh, just a sec, let me just respond on my phone or my watch. Anytime you're anytime you're looking at your phone or reading messages on your watch, you're not actively engaged in listening to the person right in front of you. And so, yeah, those are just some tips to give them your undivided attention.
I know NICC works with a variety of different employers with a lot of the technical skills they're needing, but also works with them for a lot of the soft skills or these real skills,
Mhm.
and also with our students in the classroom, right? There's things that we're doing to help them because that's what we're hearing from employers is they want employees that have not only the technical skills, but some of these soft skills. In your work in higher education, how are you seeing that being incorporated into higher education with our students?
I think it varies based on kind of how, the discipline, or kind of how people are, how receptive they are to teaching it themselves, or to being allowing it in their curriculum. But I would say what I've seen is, you know, in colleges, there's usually an orientation class and some kind of introduction or orientation itself, maybe a day or a week of kind of meetings and onboarding and training for how to go to college, just as much as they might have for going to work. And so in those moments, there's that opportunity to kind of communicate to a student um, how we do things, and what they can expect, and kind of how they need to communicate with us and how we'll communicate with them. And we're kind of modeling some of those pieces. So if we're showing good customer service, for example, when we're doing student services, then they're going to start to see like, oh, that's what good customer service looks like. And then they might actually have a class on customer service, for example, or on sales or on marketing. And start learning more the technical skills of it. But we can do a lot as a college just modeling it in the regular interactions that we have. And then in those intro classes and in those intro orientations, we can start to talk about like responsibility, time management, communication, how to communicate with your instructors and employees around campus. And then we also have the opportunity to continue to develop certificates or kind of one-off training opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, certainly customized business training from your side of things, but even so, I know a couple years ago we worked on some different online modules that now, if there's the interest, we can add those online modules about real skills onto any course, honestly, that they want
Mm-hmm.
it on. But we can also just offer it to as a micro credential, right? To any student
Right.
who just wants to have a certificate that says that they have developed these real skills. Those are some examples
Yeah.
that come to
And
mind.
yeah, and even some of the extracurricular things that many students participate in, there's lots of opportunity to have some of that communication and interaction in addition to the things they're learning in the classroom.
For sure. And I know, Phi Theta Kappa is always good at that. You know, it's teaching a lot of leadership skills along with membership in the organization for those officers. But also, adding athletics for NICC, that's going to be great opportunities for people to those athletes to, some of them are going to be the leaders of that team as captains, for example, or they might be volunteering in their community and starting to practice those interpersonal relations in that way. And certainly on athletic teams, you have to communicate in a lot of sports with your teammates. So for baseball and softball, they're going to get some of that on the field.
Absolutely. Well, I think if there's anything that I've learned in the last 30 minutes in our conversation, Erin, is there really isn't a part of your life where there isn't soft skills or real skills. We're going to try to change that name where you're not going to need that. And whether you're a student in the classroom or a manager at work or a mom or a husband or an aunt or whatever, those are skills that are going to get you further because it makes people feel better, right? That feeling piece of things is such a critical piece of it.
For sure.
Well, believe it or not, we're out of time. So, Erin, I do want to thank you for today's episode and joining us and sharing your insights on soft, or as we're going to start calling it, real skills.
Thanks, Seth
Your
Godin.
perspective. Yeah. Your perspective and experience is really valuable. And I know our listeners are going to take a lot away from this conversation. So, thank you again for joining us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Catalyst. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Want to learn more about NICC and the many ways we support our students, partners, and community? Visit nicc.edu for more resources and upcoming opportunities. This podcast is produced by Northeast Iowa Community College and hosted by Amy Lasack with producer Tessa Hill, audio engineer Andrew Saunders, story editor Doug Ropa, and graphic designer Ashley Konzen.